So, again, one of those days on which I am trying to one-handedly type in my fucking password and it works. But yeah, today we're gonna go through some Reddit things while I'm trying to do everything else that I want to do today. And, basically the same thing as I did yesterday. May or may not be too smart, but we will see how it goes. If you need more Stoic literature, take a look at this. Well, no. Words of the High One being Odin. It is a collection of small verses on how one should live their life. Many verses deal with how one should appreciate what one does, not desire wealth or fame, and be kind with other people. The best English translation is, in my opinion, by Caroline Larrington, although Jackson Crawford also has a very well-known one. Larrington preserves the poetry of the verses and accuracy best, in my opinion. Odin was seemingly very stoic. Here are a couple of verses. Well, quite interesting. Like, at first I thought, I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit about Odin. I noticed how similar it is to havamal, the old Norse verses of wisdom. Norse? It isn't known very much outside of my own culture. The word havamal roughly translates into the words of the High One. Well, let's see. Not at all should one man reproach another for what is common among man. Among man's sons, the wise are made fools by that mighty force, desire. Stanza 94, apparently. Yes, I'm reading it correctly. Not at all should one man reproach another for what is common among man. What does reproach mean? Let's start there. Rebuke, scold, chide, admonish. Oh, I see. One man reproach another for what is common among man. Among man's sons, the wise are made fools by that mighty force, desire. Well, yeah. Desire is a bitch. Not really, actually. I mean, if you're desiring something, if you really want to have something, then you're gonna work for it, ? Which is good in the end, I'd say, at least. I don't know, I wouldn't view it as something bad to desire something. Maybe, just maybe, you then work in a way that is undesirable and or just not right to do. But I think desiring something, which I guess and think is willing to have something, and wanting something, is not bad. I think it's even good, isn't it? I mean, I also want to have things, and then I'm working for them because I'm willing to have them. And then I'm having a cool process. And this process is gonna make me a certain person, isn't it? Isn't it gonna make me a certain person when I work for the things I wanna have? And especially when it is something that is pretty big and I really, really have to work for it quite hard, then it's maybe gonna change me. Most often in a way that is desirable. Anyway, maybe I'm just me, anyway. Silent and thoughtful a prince's son should be, and bold in fighting. Cheerful and merry every man should be until he comes to death. Cheerful and merry until he comes to death. Well, yeah. I don't know, I think in the end, we all do make our lives way harder than they need to be, but just not being good-mooded. You can choose to be good-mooded. On the other hand, you can also choose not to be good-mooded, which is something that I'm realizing quite often, pretty lately, especially, when I'm not in a good mood, and I think and say to myself, why am I not in a good mood? First of all, there's many reasons why I could be, not necessarily should be, but could be, or can choose to be. Obviously, there is also a ton of things that I don't know, like for whatever reason, you can then say, well, this is a reason for me, or a reason for me not to be happy, and so on and so on and so on. But in the end, it really boils down to your opinion, your point of view, and how you structure your world. Obviously, when you think that this is bad and that is bad and the other thing over there is bad, then, well, probably not going to be too happy about your life, about yourself, about whatever the fuck we're talking about. But so in the end, it's like, once again, I come to the point to say that we can choose to be happy. We really can, if we want to. Of course, when we just don't want to do that, then we just don't have to. Nobody's telling or making you do that. But, I'd say it makes sense, doesn't it? It makes sense to be good mood. It makes sense to be happy. It makes sense to live a life that is good. And I would argue that your life isn't too good when you're always in a bad mood, no matter because of what reason. Well, yeah. A farm of your own is better, even if small. Everyone's someone at home. Though he has 2 goats in a twig-roofed room, that is still better than begging. Yeah, this is a very positive view on life. Even if whatever you have is not too much, it's at least better than having nothing. Which I guess, talking about comparing yourself to, for example, somebody else, this is kind of the positive side of it. Okay, I may not be having as much as somebody else, but, really big but, I do have more than somebody else. Somebody that has nothing. And this is in the end always going to be better than having nothing. Just having something, even if it might not be much, is always going to be better than having nothing. This is always going to be the case, no matter fucking what. You can say whatever. It's not going to be better, period. Which makes sense. And I know that everyone is going to understand that. And everyone is always going to think in that way. Like, okay, having a bit is just definitely better than having nothing. Most often, having a bit of cancer is worse than having no cancer, obviously. But this is not what we're talking about. We're talking about positive things, good things. But still, I do want to really over-communicate things as well as I can. And include as many things as I can, and points of views as I can, and perspectives as I can. Which, by the way, was stanza 36, and the one above about death was stanza 15. The lame man rides a horse, the handless man drives the herd. The deaf man fights and succeeds. To be blind is better than to be burned. A corpse is of no use to anyone. I'm not quite sure what I am trying to understand there, but I think especially the last sentence is key. A corpse is of no use to anyone. It might be about, preserving people and or maybe it is about preventing people from committing suicide. As maybe as strange and as far-fetched as it may sound, but I don't know, a corpse is of no use to anyone. If you're dead, you basically are of no use to anyone. But if you aren't dead, you're. Even if you might think you aren't, you are. There's nothing worse than to be dead for just the community. You can't do anything then. You're just dead then. The only thing you're probably going to do is just creating more harm than you're trying to solve quite. Because you're dead, which is obviously going to make certain people unhappy. It's gonna, basically, if you think about society and if you think about the world as a system, the system loses one gear. One potentially and maybe very important gear. Maybe later in your life, as you have been able to kind of overcome your depression, overcome mental illnesses and whatever it might be about. Maybe it's also about physical things that you may or may not be able to overcome, but you can live with them by changing your perspective and changing your point of view and changing how you think about things. Maybe then you're going to be of really big use for quite a ton of people because you're inventing something or because you're just doing something great. And yeah, a corpse is of no use to anyone. The stupid man stays awake all night and worries about everything. He's tired out when the morning comes, and all's just as bad as it was. Well, should I take it literal and just don't worry about anything then, and or just at least don't worry too much then? Or it's all just as bad as it was. You could also just take it as like break the cycle. If you're seeing something not working, like why do you persist trying to do the same thing in the same way? Like if it is clearly not working and or you have kind of, seen that it is not working, like why should one pursue a path in a certain way that, it's just not working, at least not for you. Doesn't mean that it's not going to work for me, doesn't mean it's not going to work for your brother, doesn't mean fucking anything, If it is not working for you, it is not working for you, period. Really, really, really interesting. For the Caroline Larrington version, what is the title of the book as published? Thanks. The Poetic Edda, published by Oxford. Thank you. My library has it, so I have it on hold now for me. For those looking, my library filled it as The Poetic Edda, translated with an introduction and notes by Caroline Larrington and Dewey Decimal number blah 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 blah. Awesome, thank you. Do you remember any points where they differ in thought? I'm already reading about Stoicism and Buddhism and a third philosophy, maybe too much right now, so I wanted to know if the differences, so I can decide whether I should read it for those or just stay with the ones I have. Where they differ in thought is mostly because they differ a lot in setting and culture. Stoicism is written mostly for ancient Mediterranean statesmen, but havamal is more religious in nature and is written for the Norse. What is the Norse? Norwegian language. Well, thought about that. Every man. It is more focused on defense and offense in war and personal struggles than Stoicism is, in my opinion, but I'm no expert. At a glance, a corpse is of no use to anyone could be a point of divergence. Yeah, because the Stoicism, the Stoics clearly said somewhere, as far as I know, that, suicide is a viable option. So there's an Discourses 1.2 by Epictetus, paragraph, actually two of them, but I'm probably going to read only one of them. This Priscus Helvidius too saw and acted accordingly, for when Vespasian had sent to forbid his going to the Senate, he answered, "It is in your power to prevent my continuing a senator, but while I am one I must go. Well then, at least be silent there. Do not ask my opinion, and I will be silent. But I must ask it, and I must speak what appears to me to be right. But if you do, I will put you to death. When did I ever tell you that I was immortal? You will do your part and mine, and I mine. It is yours to kill and mine to die intrepid, yours to banish, mine to depart untroubled. What good then did Priscus do, who was but a single person? Why, what good does the purple do to the garment? What but to be beautiful in itself and to set a good example to the rest?" A quote was found to be attributed to Epictetus in Discourses blah 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 by Higginson. In what manner upon every occasion to preserve our character? Yeah, this clearly says like, okay, as long as you kind of preserve your character, it is fine, and by death maybe, which might occur when you're not trying to lie. There's so many ways that back in the days could have led to death, which were only based on, okay, you trying to be as virtuous as you can or as virtuous as you have always been. Yeah. How one may preserve one's proper character in everything, how a man on every occasion can maintain his proper character, how may a man preserve his proper character upon every occasion. Yeah. Oh, by the way, always the same quote, but translated by somebody else. So the first one is Higginson, then Hart, then Long, and then Old Father. I guess I'm actually not quite sure what it is about the translation there or something else. But anyway, pretty cool stanzas and pretty cool verses. Maybe I'm actually gonna have a look at it. Maybe I'm gonna go through it. I'm not quite sure, but I'm gonna decide someday, I guess. But since I think I have recorded enough for today, I'm gonna leave it with, because I think it is worth reading once again and or saying once again, a corpse is of no use to anyone. That being said, see you the next time. Bye bye.